All right, so today I'd like to talk to you about putting together materials for mass media. Let me see, how do I do this? And here we go. All right, so what I really want us to talk about is the press release, and sometimes it's called the news release. So when we talk about public relations strategies, and when I'm often talking about how you need to come up with tactics, the nuts and bolts of the campaign, this is one of those nuts and bolts, and that's why we call this a tactic. So if your strategy is connect with the media, then your tactic would be to create a press release to connect with the media. Okay, so the kind of work that we'd like to put together, the kind of work we want to write, needs to be high quality, needs to be very well targeted. You know, the content has to be very specific and tailored to the media that you're writing and requesting that article to be published. And it has to be great quality so that you would hope that the media professional, the journalist, would just take and run with that story. All right. Um, so really, if they love what you've written, right, the press release that you've written and you've shared that, then you want to, the media is going to cover the story. And that is what we call earned media, which means we haven't paid for the story. We've just created really high quality, well-targeted content for a specific media house. And they love your work and they're going to run with that story. So that's what we call earned media. Of course, the kind of work that you need to put in has to be newsworthy, which means you've got something new to say, something interesting to say that the editors really like, and it's fresh, and it's something that their audience will like. And so they make that decision whether they want to carry it or not. Okay. So while you're putting together any kind of press release or a news release, by the way, it is something that you would be expected to know about if you were to do an internship or do a job. This is just one of those things that you just have to learn to do. These are the things that you want to ask yourself. What is the key message? So what exactly is the message that I am trying to share with these journalists so that they would then write it as part of their article in their newspaper. Number two, who is the primary audience? So obviously for us, often it's the journalist or the blogger who's going to cover your story. Number three, how does the audience benefit from the product or the service? And what is the goal of the release, right? Do we want people to attend an event? Do we want people to buy a product? So we are obviously sharing this information with journalists and bloggers with the hope that they're going to publish it. Okay. All right. Okay. So let's talk about what a press release would look like. So this is a template. And what you want to do is pay attention to the big headings that you are seeing. Okay. So you see there's a company letterhead right up on the top, right here. There's the headline and the sub-headline. Okay. Then your headline should not be too long, right? So 18 words or less. Sub-headline, similar, just one line. Then you have the date line, city, month, day, year. See the format? See where the caps are? See where the commas are? Think about all of that. You need that, okay? Then you have the first 1, 2, 3 lines. And these are, we call it the lead paragraph, right? So this is what grabs the audience with an engaging first sentence, okay? Then you talk a little bit about whatever it is that you want to talk about, the event, the product, the service, whatever that is. And then you have a quotation. And that basically is just, something that the CEO said, or the chief marketing officer said, or if it's a movie, what the celebrity or the director, actor, somebody said, right? So it could be a quote, and it's the same person, John, and maybe then there could be Jane. If you want two different people, you could, but sometimes it's the same person, and that's fine. And then you have a call to action in this case, because it's for a game development um, company, right? But it could be a call to action like, here's where you'd find this information, here's where you can buy tickets to the event, right? So you have that, and it's hyperlinked. And then you talk just maybe a couple lines about the company. So in this case, it would be this indie game developer company. And then you have the contact information of somebody who actually created this press release. So it has to be the press contact, not the CEO, but the press contact. So in this case, it may be you. All right. So that's kind of basically what a press release looks like. And I have a bunch of samples for you to see, to explore, to learn. All right. So now let's talk about the online news release, right? So in general, over the years, we've moved away from the format that has been primarily print to now online, right? Most things are now not printed because they can be shared online. But any news release is single-spaced and pretty short, okay? I'm saying under 200 words. It could be a little longer. It's okay, but in general, it's no more than a page. And like I said, it's the inverted pyramid approach, which means the most important information should come first, okay? Your headline should be 18 to 20 words tops, all right? Should have the key message. So Netflix is increasing, we will be increasing our prices, and Netflix is increasing prices. It's the most important conversation in the larger context of the press release, and that should come first. Provide the city of origination at the start of the lead paragraph. So the city in caps, Los Angeles, that's what I was talking about. That's how it would look. And then the lead would be 2 to 3 sentences only, right? So keep it short, and every word that you put in there, think about the words that you're going to use. Okay. All right. Keyword for SEO. SEO is search engine optimization. I skipped that as I was talking, but keyword for SEO. Now that all of these news releases are online, they're often posted, and there's often a lot of searching that happens when somebody is looking for interesting news, for example, the journalist. And so use the right words. Netflix hikes rates, right? Words like that get picked up. If it's a long sentence, you're telling a story, not in the headline, not a good idea. Go straight to the point. When if somebody's looking for something about Netflix or about, you know, something very specific to the economy or companies raising rates as services getting more expensive, your particular press release needs to just stand out. Okay. Let's move on to the next one. So here are some other suggestions, and I hope you're taking note as we're going here. So every paragraph should not be more than 2 to 3 sentences. So keep it short and put at least one quote. And we call that a pull quote. Okay, so highlight it in some way. It could be bold, it could be italicized. And because it's an online news release, you want to provide clickable links, okay? Last section should be about the organization plus how they can reach you, the PR person. And if you're emailing this news release, do not send it as an attachment because people don't open attachments. So put it in the body of the email. So copy paste it, put it in the body. before sending it. People are uncomfortable with anything that is attached, especially if it's coming from an unknown source. You would be too. So that's something to pay attention to. Okay. The multimedia news release. Now, what you're seeing more and more, right? And there are companies that offer services to just send out press releases. They have contacts with media people. You would just send them a press release, which will then be sent out. But what you send them and the software that they use, a lot of these companies who send out press releases, it's no longer just one document. Now, what we have is what is called a multimedia news release. So they have photos and videos and audio visual things and ways to add the logo. And, they've just made it so fun. And you can, for an extra fee, you can actually choose to send the media folks not just your press release, but also some amazing photos and videos and podcast material and whatever you have, right, that you've created, high resolution stuff. You can almost embed it as you create the press release. It's a very interesting format. And then you send that out. So, and the same company, for like, I think it starts at $100, and they send out to like, you know, a pretty decent group of people. But if you want to do a multimedia news release and you want to add a lot more stuff to it, you can definitely send you might spend a lot of money, but you'll be able to send out this whole beautiful package of things. And when you're able to tell a story about your company, about your history, about the CEO or the board of directors and what their qualifications are and what they bring to the platform, and maybe a mad scientist who created this amazing service, like you are able to talk about all the stuff, so it adds a lot of dimension to your story. And so it's when people see that, when bloggers see that, when influencers see that, when journalists see that, they feel like, oh, this has got some real meat, right, on this story. And so this will be really fun to write about. And so it definitely is helpful for journalists, and it definitely helps us, um, as the PR folks representing a client, because there's a high likelihood that something like this will be picked up. So this kind of multimedia news release is also called the smart media release or the social media release. So just some words to pay attention to, um, acronyms to be mindful of. Okay, so that's the multimedia news release. The other thing I want to talk about is that a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So when you look at a picture like this, you know what's happening here, right? You know that uh, Santa's here with a kid, and there is a gentleman who's at the back, and he probably is just back from serving, and he's hiding, and he can't wait to surprise his kid, right? It's a special picture. It's a special photo. When you're choosing photos for your own media kit, when you're trying to send some really good photos to the media person, to the journalist, pay attention to what you're sending, because you want to send something so memorable, so something with pathos in it, something that is emotionally connecting with people. Then there's more likelihood for it to get picked up, and you can really tell your story. So just something to think about, as you put something like that together. Whenever we do any kind of publicity photo, you want to remember that the quality has to be really good. It has to be relevant. It has to be in that 1/3, 2/3 ratio. If you've ever taken a photography class, that's what they will tell you, that you should have those kind of specific ratio. The composition of the frame has to be pleasing to the eyes. The camera angles have to be right. The lighting has to be right. And visually, it has to be interesting, right? So Any press release, when it's sent with a video, with a visual of any kind, tends to get more attention. But nowadays, we see a lot of people sending photos in. So find a way for your press release to stand out. And one way to do that is to put really good photos along with that press release. Okay, so that's sort of the best practices of publicity photos. All right. The next thing I'd like to share with you is what we call an infographic. So I'll tell you a little story. When I started with, with a job, one thing that I was asked to do is to put together an infographic. So an infographic is basically uh, a visual that uh, tells a better story than just numbers. Okay, so you could come up with different facts. It could be a um, it could be a data-based story, but it's visually depicted. So, for example, in my case, they wanted me to showcase how an industry had grown. And I had numbers, and I said, okay, I have numbers, but I want to be able to do it better. And I want to show how things have grown. So I had a small plant as the first photo. And then as the numbers grew, the plant grew, right? It was like a little palm tree that got, it was tiny and then it got bigger, 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 and it got really tall. And I showcased that visually. And I think that was one of the reasons I got the job. And so just something to pay attention to when you are out there, you're presenting some data. People are very visual. So if you can find a way to share that story, to tell the same story in a graphical form, in a pictorial form, in a visual form, it just it's just more memorable, and sometimes it's even easier to understand. So for example, in this particular visual that you're seeing here, it's a corn, uh, that has been cut into lots of little parts, as you can tell. And, since we're talking about food prices, there is a food visual here. And then it's been broken down into different things, whether policy, farmland, economic factors, declining reserves, and all of them have little, symbolic icons next to them. All of it with the symbols, with the write-up, with how it's visually depicted. It's a lot of information, but it just looks nicer to present, to the eye. It's just visually more pleasing. So this is what we call an infographic. If you go on Canva and you type infographic, you actually can see a lot of these kinds of things show up. And then you can just manipulate it and add whatever you want to and edit that picture. But infographics are a great way to impress your hiring manager or your boss or senior management. So it's something to consider as, you put stuff together for this class or for another class. Just try to use infographics. And I will move on to press kits. Media press kits. Okay. So press kits, traditionally press kits was like a folder, like a file folder with two pockets when you open them. And that's what we used to showcase our clients' profiles and all the information. And we would give these press kits. I mean, we would spend overnight printing a lot of these documents, which had the press releases and a bunch of other things, and we would put it in the folder. We would put our card in there, and every file would be then put together because you had an event the next day. And so you worked overnight and you put this stuff manually inside folders, printed, you know, stuffed in, packaged nicely, ready to go. So that's kind of how it was years ago. The goal was we want to provide as much information as we can to our reporters, to the journalists who come to our events, so that they'd be ready to write their story. So a 9 by 12 folder with pockets is what the traditional one looked like. But nowadays, we don't do that anymore. I mean, unless it's a really formal event. But in general, now it's just a digital media kit, and either we do a Dropbox link or we do a flash drive with the documents that we would hand out at the event itself, on the day of that event. Okay, so that's what a media or a press kit looks like. So let me show you what all the different documents that we put into these press kits, whether it's a flash drive or whether it's a printed setup. This is what it would have, right? So the press release, which is what you were just introduced to a little earlier today, it could have a letter to the editor or something. Now, not all of these things have to be in every press release, right? You can play around with it. But you definitely want the press release. You definitely want what we called a fact sheet. So let's say if it's a product that you are working on, that you are trying to promote, or if it's a service, then you want to talk about that product, talk about that service. If you have any brochures that you've created, the three-fold ones, the two-fold ones, or just flyers, that stuff would go in there. If you have a CEO or a chief marketing officer coming to that event, you want to tell everything about that particular person. You want to tell the journalist. So that's an executive bio that you create something like that. If anything has been done before, right? So if there was a similar event that happened before, which got coverage, you definitely want to put in that information into this press kit. And years ago we had what we called, these CDs, right? We don't even use them anymore. But there are some companies that still have them. You still see them, but be careful with that one, honestly, because people may not know how to view it, right? Because there are no CD players anymore as well. And then what we call a company backgrounder is just something about the company. So if it were Netflix, talk about the history of Netflix and everything about the company. So that would go in your press kit as well. If you have, if it's a protein powder, then maybe put in a couple samples, like what you see on this sheet here. So just be creative, a little bit creative with it, but in general, things that are going to really help the journalist. We use these different pieces of material, and we write them out, we update them as we go, and we share them in our press kit. Let's now talk about MAT or feature releases, okay? So a MAT release is any kind of release that uses a feature story angle. So let's say in this case, if I'd like somebody, like an expert, like a Food Network famous celebrity chef, to talk about a particular chocolate that has just been released by Hershey's, I would say, well, why don't we get somebody to create a list of recipes using this particular chocolate? So let's reach out to this famous celebrity chef, have them come up with recipes where you can use dark chocolate with marshmallow. All right. And then all of those recipes we are going to send to Food Network and say, would you like to cover this? We would like in some ways to promote our dark chocolate with marshmallow. And you would have something really interesting to talk about as well, right? So that's the kind of partnership, so to speak, that you would do. Often, we could even do this, right? We could have this beautiful feature with all of these cool chocolates which are all seasonal and they're perfect for fall or spring, Easter, right? And you could say, we'll come up with all this really fun stuff. It'll look like a journalist wrote all of this, and we'll just throw in some, like, sprinkle some um, brand name of Hershey in there. But in general, it's going to be all about kids and Easter eggs and bunnies and chocolate bunnies and things like that. But we won't really talk about the brand as much, right? And we'll give you something really pretty, and you can splash it all over your front page and it'll look great, and it's going to sell copies or whatever it is, right? So that's what a matte or a feature release is. You are not paying anybody to do anything. Therefore, this is not an advertisement of any kind. We were still hoping that somebody will cover our story, but we are writing it as a feature. Okay, so that's the difference. All right, let's move on to the next few things. And I very briefly addressed this in some of the earlier slides. So let me just quickly go over it. Media alert, fact sheets are two things that you should know about. So a media alert is basically just a quick, very short who, what, when, why, how kind of short memo. Think of it as a small WhatsApp message or a tweet, or just a ping, something like that. You're sending something real quick to the reporter, telling them, oh, like Oprah Winfrey is going to be here, and maybe you should come check out this event. You'd get an opportunity to interview her, that kind of thing. So that's a media alert. A fact sheet can be broken down into these two things. One is a summary sheet, and one is a corporate profile sheet. So if it's a new product that's coming out, like like maybe Dyson decides to come up with a washing machine, right? And you want to tell them everything, because Dyson is all about the technology and all the technical specifics and things like that, right? All their ads are like that. And so let's say it's a product like that. You want to give absolutely precise information about the product, the new washing machine, what it does, warranty, usage information, blah, 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 right? So that's the summary sheet. Oh, excuse me. And a corporate profile sheet is really specifically about the company itself, right? The products of the company, the revenue, the employers, markets it serves, and all of that information. So that's about the brand itself. Let's move on and now talk about pitching a story. PR is really all about pitching, right? How do we get a journalist to notice our brand, our specific article, our specific press release? There are a few things you need to do. One is, which is key, is building a relationship. The better your relationship with that journalist, the more trustworthy your story becomes. The more trustworthy you are, the more likely the journalist is going to decide to open an email from you versus the other 200 that he or she may have received that week. So building a relationship is key. You want to find ways to engage them through email, through phone, through tweets. If you can meet them face to face, meet them face to face. And you've got to convince them that your story is newsworthy, that you have something interesting to share. Twitter is a great way to go. A lot of my press releases have gotten picked up because I have tweeted and then, tagged a bunch of people who I've spent some time following, and I comment on their stories, and I just, share it out, or, ask a question, or just compliment them, or, if I like something, I don't have to be artificial about it, but I genuinely pay attention to what they're working on. So when I have to pitch, I know what they like, right? And there are other such companies. So let's talk about the art of pitching a story, right? So I just, love Cision, HARO, help a reporter out. Help a reporter out. So this, I just love this platform. It's a great platform. It basically is a kind of like a marketplace solution. So if I'm a brand and I'm looking for somebody to cover my story, I can, share it out. I can, talk about it. This is what I do, and this is, I would love for somebody to cover it. And if you are a journalist, then you would say, I'm looking for so and so, right? So there's a way you can just connect. You get emails, you can subscribe to emails. You actually have to be careful. You get ridiculous number of emails from these guys if you've chosen multiple sections that you're interested in. But I did that because I was trying to learn really, and it's overwhelming the number of emails that go back and forth. You get a lot of action on the site, and then you can obviously also go, look at Twitter, look at X, right, and connect with people who you feel like would be able to cover your brand. So just based on the slide, one thing to know about is Haro, HARO, which is what we just talked about, and it's owned by a company called Cision. All right. So let's quickly talk about how your press release materials, right? All of the stuff that you may have created, from backgrounders to fact sheets to press releases to photos that you may have gathered to videos that you may have created. What are all the different ways of distributing it, right? So we've talked about email, and we know that we copy paste the press release directly into the email as much as possible, no attachments. You can add a link to the Dropbox if you want, okay? You can snail mail it, which means you actually put it in a package and you mail it out, which is an expensive proposition if you want to spread the word. Believe it or not, people still use a lot of fax. So that still exists. And there are online newsrooms. So that would be your corporate newsroom. So for example, Netflix will have a newsroom or a press room on their site. It would be netflix.com/press, right? And you would put your information there. And then there's electronic news services, which basically is the multimedia press release distribution service that I talked about, that you pay them some money, you send them all this information, and then you choose the kind of publication, and then they will send that out. Okay, so there are different ways to use that stuff. All right. The next thing I'd like to talk about, so we've talked a bunch about press releases and press kits, and I now want to talk to you about media interviews. So sometimes you've got to put your client, the CEO or the CMO or the chief sales officer on, uh, you know, on spotlight, right? So you want a journalist or a reporter to cover what they have to say. And often they're talking about how the company is doing, how the performance has been, or they're talking about, a new product or new service that is being launched. So if it is a print interview, if that's informal, it's just quick Q&As. Sometimes it's just like, it's a written interview, you just complete it and you work with the CEO, get it done, and you send it to the journalist. Sometimes the actual person who's being interviewed would write it, would share it. Magazine interviews are a little bit more in depth, a lot of Q&A kind of questions. TV interviews are serious business. You have to train your CEO. You have to train any client members that you are representing. You often want to ask the questions ahead of time, send them to the client, get him to prepare for it a little bit, and be there during the interviews. So if the reporter is asking too many questions, you have to find a way to bring them back on the topic, right? So those are media interviews that you have to prepare for. This is part of your job. Next is news and press conferences. This is something you would do a lot if you're working in a PR agency and you are representing a client who has a bigger budget and who's going to constantly throw an event for the media. Okay, so that's a press conference. So it's often very formal. There is a table that is set up. There is the CEO or whoever is the main people for, main team members for this particular service or product. They're there. They're sitting at the table along with the press person and maybe a couple other people, team members. And, you are a press, you're in charge of this conference, and you've planned this whole thing out, and you've called a lot of these reporters to say, please come to our event. We are going to, talk about our product and our service. And you will get a chance to interview some of these people. So they're all invited. Often you have a little, spread, like a breakfast spread or a lunch spread out for them to come to thank them in some ways. There's never any alcohol served at these events, but there's tea, coffee, and croissants or Danish, some things like that. And it's a once in a while thing. It's like it happens only when there's something newsworthy to be shared. And media kits are prepared and then they're distributed. When I say distributed, it could be online or it could be at the event if it's a much more formal event. If the conferences are happening on a regular, basis, then they are called briefings. That's what we see in the White House. When you have the press secretary share information, that is called a briefing because it happens every day at the same time. But if it's a corporate event, then it's often a one-off thing. All right, a couple more things about a news conference. There will be a time when your client would say, we should do a news conference. And you need to be that sane voice in the room that says, well, why? Do we have something unique to say? Do we have something interesting to say? Because when you don't ask those questions, what ends up happening is they'll throw a big event, they'll spend a lot of money, and then they'll be really disappointed when the media don't show up. Well, you know why they're not going to show up. They're not going to show up because you've got nothing that interesting to say. So it's really important to make sure that the reason you're doing this is because you have something new to share, something unique to share, and that would make sense for the media people to come. The location and the timing should be convenient. Let them know in advance. There's a lot of calling that we need to do to say, there's this event happening. Would you be coming for it? I'm just checking on, checking in to just, to make sure that you know about this event and that it's on your schedule to come. And you've got to do that multiple times to make sure that they show up. And then writing statements for spokespeople. That's a conversation you have with the CEO or CMO or the salesperson or whoever who is there, who's in charge, who's the most senior person from the company. Make sure that they know that they have something to say and how they're going to say it. Get them to practice. Anticipate questions around that product, that service. Get them to practice. It's really important to get them to practice. And that way that when a question is posed, that they would know what to say. All right. What I want to now show you is a movie premiere.
So good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this launch event for Bond 23.
Next year, when we open the picture, will be within days of when Dr. No opened 50 years ago. And now I want to confirm the worst kept secret in London, the title of the film.
Genuinely thrilled to have the most amazing cast. I'm incredibly excited to be doing it, and it I think, has all the elements of a classic Bond movie, including, to quell any rumors, a lot of action.
The lifelong Bond fan and has thrown himself into this and thrown himself into the whole sort of like huge machine that is a Bond movie. He's got a huge amount of confidence and know-how, and he's a great manager and he's a superb director. So we couldn't be in a better place.
Yeah, it's the quality of the cast and the actor and the whole crew is pretty amazing. So it's a great honor.
It's been so exciting, been nerve-wracking as well. It's just so glamorous. I've never experienced anything as glamorous as this. It feels like it's such a privilege to be part of this. So I'm still pinching myself. And I think even when it's all over and we've done, the film, I'll still be pinching myself.
Thank you all very much.
Incredibly exciting. We've got a superb script and we've got an amazing cast, and everything's ready to go.
So that was a premiere of a James Bond movie, and a PR person would be in charge of actually setting up this whole thing, inviting media folks to the event, making sure everyone gets to share something about their role or their thoughts about the film. Okay, so a media tour is when you are bringing in journalists into your companies, right? So you're saying, we're going to showcase this new power plant that we've put together. Let's say you are a power company and you would bring somebody in, or a group of people in, get to know them a little bit, showcase your facilities, stuff like that. So that's what we call a media tour. Now, media tours can be of 3 different kinds. Okay, number 1 is what we call a junket, which is what I just talked about, bringing somebody into your manufacturing facility, into your spa, and you pick up the tab in terms of like, okay, we'll take care of everyone's dinner, or we'll house them, right? For a day, for a night, everyone can come and spend time here overnight and experience our resort, our spa, or, our facilities. And sometimes when companies offer that, a bigger newspaper would say, like, we'll be there, we'll take care of our own accommodations, but you can show us a good time, right? So that way, it wouldn't feel like, well, you paid for this, and so now I'm obligated to write the story. Instead of that, they would just say, we'll take care of our own accommodation and food, but please show us the facility, and we'd be happy to come for that. So that's a junket. The other one is called a fam trip, which basically is being asked to visit Costa Rica and a specific resort, and travel writers do that. And then there's meeting with editors, which basically means that executives from a corporation would go to LA Times or New York Times to meet with the people and talk about the things that they have. So it's the other way, right? So for a junket, the journalist would go to the client, and for the meeting with editors, the corporations, executives will go to the editors. Okay, so those are the 3 different kinds of tours. All right. And then finally, we have what we call press parties. So let's say there is a big launch, and Calvin Klein is promoting their new line of bags. Okay, and you just want to throw a party, and there's no obligation for anyone, but you would just invite people over, and then in the middle of the party, the Calvin Klein host would say to all of the reporters, thank you for coming. We have this new brand new line, and it's our best yet, and we spend this kind of money in research and development to create this thing, and it's been designed by this famous designer who has been with us for the last 4 years, and we poached him from Prada, and it's been the best decision yet. And I hope that you're able to like check out our bags that we've displayed here. If you need more information, please pick up a flash drive on your way out. And thank you for coming. Enjoy your evening, right? And you just make a pitch like that, and that's it. And it's a great way for the organizations and the clients to build goodwill with the press people, and just it's a relationship building thing. So that's what a press party would be.